Welcome to another episode of Electric City Television's Roundtable Discussions. I'm your host, Travis Prince, and today my guest is Dino DeNaples. Hey, Dino, how's it going?
Hey, Travis, how you making out?
Pretty good, man, pretty good. Happy for you to come back to the studio again. It's been a while since we talked.
Glad to be here.
So, for people who aren't aware of you, introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a little bit about yourself and the kind of work you do.
Travis, I do a lot of photography. In addition, I have a background in sculpture. On top of that, I'm a painter. So I kind of, at times, meld all those together and sometimes just isolate one at a time and work on them. But I think, they all make up who I am.
Yeah. So a photographer, a sculptor, a painter, that's a lot of different fields. So are you originally from the Scranton area?
I am,
Yeah.
yes.
What did you go to school around here? High school, college, or?
So I did. I went through grade school, high school for a little bit, ended up in military school for a short period, saw that side of life. And I think that contributed a bit to the discipline I take in to the art forms that I kind of embrace. Came back to the area, finished high school. From there, moved to New York City. Dove into photography as far as fashion, still life, commercial. And took it a step further. In my brain always wanted to kind of dive into the fine art world and figured out that side of, my time.
So you said you were in New York for a while. Did you work with any like major studios or have any like really significant photographers that had a big impact on you and your work while you were there?
I did. I had kind of all of that happen. New York's a magical place. I don't know how else to put it. And I think that if you have the drive, people are receptive. And I found that in many cases in the city. Inspiration and where we find it, who could say why we're interested in what we're interested in, and one inspires one over the other. We're human.
Yeah.
Thank God. Or the universe or whoever. But inspiration and inspirational people I found in New York, and I did have the opportunity to work with extraordinary people, from fashion to still life, from in photography, from industrial designers that solved sculptors' problems. That side of the world I really enjoyed, working with machinists. I worked for a company called Product and Design in Brooklyn. They're still on the map.
Wow.
They're based in Oakland as well, in California. And those experiences of being around heavy equipment and, my background, I was born in a junkyard.
Oh, yeah.
So it sounds a little bizarre to say that, but I literally was raised in the center of this scrapyard. And so heavy equipment and heavy machinery always was around the core of my being. Just that kind of intensity was always there. So taking those, forms that I saw back in, my early days of work, going into New York with the idea I wanted to, dive into fashion photography and studio photography, and then coming out with pieces like we're surrounded with.
Yeah.
it wasn't a straight path.
Yeah, I can see. Yeah.
It wasn't that. And the whole time I would, come back and forth from the city to the junkyard and, I don't know, lose myself in the fascination of, objects.
Yeah. So going from, like you say, working in the fashion industry with live models, with attitudes and personalities, and coming back to
For a 9 to 5.
Yeah, exactly. And then being in your original element, just around heavy machinery and equipment and scraps and stuff like that, and inanimate objects, and still finding, the beauty in that as well. It's like two different life forms almost.
Yeah, it was really a symbiotic balance too. Like I couldn't have one without the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just, hence leaving the area and trying to explore and expand my horizons. Finding myself in New York City, fascinated by all the people that were in front of me living their dreams, with no more or less than I had, but drive.
Yeah.
A lot of opportunity in front of you. You have to seize it.
Yeah. And so you were able to pull a lot of stuff from your time in New York, a lot of experiences, and bring that all together into the art you create now.
I try every day to do that. I think that the core of who we are should speak through our art. Mm-hmm. And if we have the ability to send messages through any means, I guess just don't make it contrived.
Yeah.
Just let it be natural. And I think your art will speak for you.
Well, being a photographer, and as fast as technology has changed in the last 10 years, 20 years, how have you been able to utilize the newer technologies and software programs to help enhance and embellish your photography?
Great question, Travis. It's a double-edged sword, too. That technology that became readily available to, yourself or myself allowed me to do this.
Yeah.
This was taken with a 4x5 megapixel camera, which is just mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Because that was like a very small
shot
file.
For that. Yeah. Right.
And I did it with a Canon D1, an SLR camera. It was like, I can't say top of the line. There was the D1S, which, had a bigger memory file storage, but these are still state of the art, $4,000, $5,000 bodies, couple $1,000 lens. At the end of the picture, you're invested in, I don't know, maybe a $10,000 photograph to engineer that, that picture. So with that said, I saw technology at its start, and I got an opportunity to work with people to, well, let's just say, overcome the ability to take what they didn't have or understand, which is like Wonka vision, the things we didn't understand, algorithms, and they figured out how to make something that was this big.
Yeah.
So watching them do that, megapixels, we all know now, are what make our pictures sharp.
Yeah.
It's the information behind it. At the state or the time of, the development of this technology, they didn't have a handle on it. No matter how much money you could put into it, the technology wasn't there yet. You're talking about $40,000 and $50,000 components that go onto a camera.
Yeah.
$40,000 and $50,000 components in the 90s to take a picture.
Yeah, that's crazy.
To make it digital.
Yeah.
And that whole seeing that all from the backside, coming from a dark room.
Yeah, trying to transition from the film strip. Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of those things where it was like, I got to do this. But I will say, with that following, I always knew that there was an essence being lost.
Yeah.
And I feel the homogenization of everybody being able to create an image instantaneously on their cell phone is just kind of taken and diluted what anybody could do.
Yeah.
You know, to a degree without, you know, proper training. I'm thinking, you know, boy, I had, you know, 2 years, an associate degree, went on, you know, I got a 4-year degree, went on, kept going on with this idea that I'm refining myself in this arena, or forum, sorry, this forum where, you know, I'm working with chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working with, you know, physics to a degree when you're taking pictures
Yeah.
and all that. And it kind of took the, well, for sure it took the chemistry out of it.
Yeah.
And it definitely took a lot of the process of error, which could become a beautiful,
Taking light measurements and reading.
beautiful mistakes within this, you know,
adjusting for lens flares.
yes. So, you know, with that said, I know I was a little bit winded there, but I do kind of, I'm mixed and torn with the technology. If you put me back in a dark room, I'd be pleased.
Yeah, I absolutely get it, and that's a question I try to ask any artist who uses any medium is, how does the technology affect your work, especially if you're a more classically trained artist in whatever field. If you're a classically trained photographer and you know 35 millimeter film in darkrooms, and like you say, does it enhance the process or the final product by having it digital and just having everybody being able to click and flash and say, oh, I took a picture, and not understanding ISO or shutter speed or anything like that, you know? And my field is it's the digital tablets now, and I scroll through social media and you see an image and it's like, oh, that's a digital painting and not an actual brush and paint on canvas. And you know, does that subtract from the creativity? That's all for everybody to have their own opinion. But like I say, the technology is good, but at the same time, I think it gives a false sense of creativity for some people.
I love that you brought the tablet into the conversation, because I'm a classically trained artist with an old tablet with the pencil.
Okay.
Drafting.
Mm-hmm.
And I dove into information. I wanted to know everything.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get into the idea of just hearing the word classically trained, it starts with a square for me, and measurement,
Yep.
and the diagonal of the square.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what's nice about photography in classical training is it's in a rectangle, and it's a ratio.
Okay.
And ratios fall in rectangles. So photography became my pad.
I like that.
It became my fast means of drawing my shapes and objects out. In a classical forum in my brain, formatting these was all composition and all math through composition and ratio.
Okay.
And when you take those concepts into your artwork and you think about math and you think about ratios, that to me is speaking in vein of a classical artist. Mm-hmm. Whether it be music, whether, you know, drawing, drafting, sculpting, the reality of taking it back to the basics of how you come up with your object or your process or your piece or your, you know, there's a million ways to think about what we call this. Mm-hmm. There's a million ways to think about it.
Yeah.
And to me, I try to think about it as therapy more than anything. You know, not this object I'm creating to sell to you. It was a moment of my time where I cleared my mind of everything around me and gave this subject my undivided attention.
So it's more of the process.
It's a process. Yeah. And I think the sooner you get away from the idea that I need to sell something to become successful, the better art you will make.
Yeah.
And, you know, when I think about things as such, you know, I mean, I'm a grown man. I'd be probably laughed at if I said this is one of my friends, right?
I'm not laughing at you.
No, right? But truthfully, like, this is the world I want to live in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I could isolate my thoughts and I sit with things, it's just kind of like yoga in the brain.
The clarity.
Yeah. And that never escaped me from a little kid.
Yeah.
Like when I was little, I was like, you know, more than my brothers or sisters per se.
Yeah.
Where my mom was just like, just give them some colors.
Give him something.
Just give them. And then she started bringing home statues. And I would paint by number 3D objects.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. My mom was like a heavy influence of me doing what I do.
Yeah.
And noticing that I didn't do what others did with my own free time.
Yeah.
As a kid when they would try to shape you. I just didn't.
But that's what I always say too. I say it over and over and over. Like, all kids are artists. All children are artists. And somehow we lose it a little bit. Art becomes less interesting or less fun to draw and color and to mark and paint. And then for the ones of us who never lose it, here we are now, you know, and it sticks with us our whole life.
Travis, you hit it on the head there. I think the ego gets in the way. Pablo Picasso said, I spent, you know, countless years trying to figure out how to paint like, you know, Peter Paul Rubin. It took me a lifetime to figure out how to paint like a child. You know, countless years in a lifetime, that's countless years, 10 years, right?
Yeah.
Countless years. It's a long time mastering something. A lifetime to unlearn that.
To revert it all the way back to the natural source.
Goes to, you know, that old saying, sounds cliche, but you got to know the rules to break the rules.
That's true.
And I firmly believe, going back to, you know, my passion to composition and geometry, you know, once again, the classical arts, who many scoff at. I appreciate their artwork, you know, the ones that are out there and, you know, we're all in the same field, nothing but respect for whoever. You know, art is subjective. Let's never forget that.
Yep.
Art is subjective, and we shouldn't be passing judgment upon each other based upon a subjective thing.
I don't know.
You know? So with that said, the reality of taking art and bringing it out of you at the age of, how old are you, Travis?
I'm 40.
You're 40. I'm 45. So I have children. My oldest is 19.
Oh, wow.
It's almost half my life.
Yeah.
Right? So for me to, you know, take this into consideration and show him this and say this, you know, is a refinement of my thoughts, and have him, you know, look at me and say my dad's not a hippie.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard because at the end of the day, I'm the furthest thing from that. You know, the reality of what we appreciate and what we take into consideration as value, I think, you know, it takes years before people actually can catch up with people that are ahead of the time. Yeah. Not that I'm saying that my work is, but I think in a lot of artists' case, it's just one of those things that, you know, reflecting within oneself brings out what is inside you.
Yeah.
And children do it best because there's no wall there.
Yeah, they don't have that filter.
The ego,
Yeah.
the ego. We let go of that ego, or if we didn't, it speaks in our work.
Yeah.
And there's that,
It's always about trying to encapsulate those abstract thoughts, and when the artist is able to visualize the abstract, like you say, it may take the viewer a little while to catch up to the artist, because he's outside of the box. He's on a different wavelength, but if you put it out there, people will catch it.
Every artist I look at that I admire, it seems as though most of them were just on the verge of not making it. Let's just say that. And when you put into your brain, what does that mean, not making it? Like, is it like a self kind of feeling, not making it? Is it financial? What is it that, because typically if you can't financially make it, well,
you feel like you're not successful.
Yeah, there's that whole, downward spiral that comes with the attachment to money for what you do.
Yeah.
And that's a sad thing.
Yeah.
It is. And I don't think that art should be leaned on that way. Once again, go back to therapy. This is therapy for me.
Exactly.
And the pressure people put on their career per se as an artist, I may have done that as well, not having taken the paths I have. I'm a father of 4. So I knew in my life, my children were going to be my greatest creations. Mm-hmm. And they would take my undivided attention no matter what.
Yeah.
And this, to me, is an extension of the moments of time that I had without them. And that clarity of, like, I could think for myself and bring it to perspective.
Definitely, like you say, it's having that passion for any type of art is not equal, but certainly similar to having children. It takes a lot of love, time, passion, consideration, and self-reflection to be able to put yourself in the spot to be a creative, Let's look at some of the stuff you have for us and try to break down some of these.
Yeah.
So this large piece right here, I remember this one from a while ago, but this is, it always catches me with the light, the source of your light. It's, I don't know, it's something that I focus on in my own art, is that play on light, but getting it right, having that perfect vision to say, okay, this is the light, where it's, the great is all dark, is all in shadow, but you still have these hints of that bright sunlight bouncing off the middle, and then to have it and so up close and focused like that. What actually is this a picture of?
So I love found objects.
Mm-hmm.
It's a found object in my family's scrapyard, which a scrapyard has a lot of found objects. I've always been tototally inspired by the Surrealist movement and the Dada movement, and kind of like these are sketches of mine.
Yeah.
Once again, I'm sketching everything I can at once with a camera, which is amazing. It's really fast because what would this take to be a painting? And the reality of light, capturing that light like that, like seeing it, composing it, embracing the reality that light is our source of positive energy. I love seeing it right as, it's met with dark. And I think that, let's just say the energy within your piece, there's light and shadow. It's all we have to play on this world we see in 2D.
Yeah, and the light and shadow makes it 3D.
We see in 2D. And that's the other end of what I dove into is just the laws of the eye. And, so a lot of my work sometimes has a play either on, light and shadow or complementary colors. Once again, you know the rules, you break the rules.
Yeah.
You work with them and in a way that inspires you. Yeah. Like, when you bring your paintings to life, how many times have you put a painting together and it didn't come to life until that catch light hit the eye?
I swear, it's like
right like that little dot
right
hits
at
that
the end.
Because you're a portrait artist,
Yeah.
and I shoot a lot of portraits, and I know about catch light in the eye, and I know that magic that it just and it's one dot,
and that's all it takes.
one dot, and it's like
It goes
bang,
from
this eye is following
nothing,
me now.
yeah, to a whole living thing, right from just one little speck.
It's magic.
Yeah.
It is. It's for lack of better words.
Yeah.
And I still get excited about moments of seeing light where I'm like almost crashing my car and pulling over. Like taking iPhone pictures, and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm like, I'm on the side of the highway, and I'm like, no, I gotta see this.
But
is
the
beautiful.
light is so nice, right?
Yeah,
and
it's I don't know why humans we appreciate it or we don't, but I do. I got captivated as a kid and never lost that like passion to appreciate it.
Yeah.
And show people it. The way I see it.
Yeah, exactly. See it through my eyes.
Yeah, I mean, this is another piece where like I take and transform, objects.
Let's put that up on the easel.
Yep. And I just think about things that people make. I love working with other artists' work as well because, I see the passion they put into their work. I work with this marionette. I think I showed you this gentleman as well.
And that's another marionette?
Yep, and I'm going to bring this guy up into frame for a second.
And they're lovely. They look like hand-carved almost.
No, they're hand-carved,
Yeah.
yep. And the reality of the person who created them was almost a Geppetto kind of passion for doing what they did. And it's one of those things where who am I to say if this is less or more of my work, or I don't, once again, art is subjective. So the reality of trying to bring to life objects for people and make them speak through light or the absence of light
Yeah.
is really a fulfilling challenge as well.
And with these pieces here, they have this very, very dark backdrop. Where did you photograph these at?
Right in the studio where he was making them, and I travel with my own backdrops at the time and my own lighting.
So you were in the artist studio, his studio,
Yes.
and photographing his work.
Yes.
Oh, that's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, 90% of my work is on the move.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's never the confinements of walls to me don't apply.
I get it.
I'm not. I to be honest with you, walls make me nervous.
Yeah.
I'd rather be in motion.
Yeah. And like you say, just being able to highlight the creative exploits of another artist in your work and giving them that recognition at the same time producing a beautiful work of art in itself. Like that's amazing. It's that extra layer to it that I always find interesting. I grew up in Philly, all the street art, graffiti and murals, and I'm not a really big graffiti artist, not good at it, but I like to photograph people in front of graffiti and so that artist has his artwork in something that I'm trying to create too, and kind of like play with their colors and what they did, and so I really appreciate how you did these marionettes. What else we have? So we've seen this. What is this piece? Am I holding this correctly?
You could tip it upside down is usually how, there. That's usually how I work with it. This is one of the first pieces I actually took. This is on Well, I have to say, this is like probably one of the first pieces I took that told me I'm going to take more pictures like this. It was like a windshield in a 1920s car, antique, and I just was fascinated. I think how it represents like the webbing of a spider and almost reflects on the crack in ice. I liked how it leaned towards nature opposed to what it was. And the idea of transforming, you know, once again, go back to surrealism, the idea of transforming an object into another object with the eye and the play on light and composition, I found very interesting. And the lens was, you know, a great vehicle for it. Yeah, like much like Man Ray. I don't know if you're familiar with Man Ray, but
I've heard his name. He's a famous photographer from the 90s, or
well, Man Ray was earliest forms of photography. He kind of like in the darkroom came up with his own, let's just say, perfect accidents. We'll go back to that, you know, where techniques came out of chemistry. In chemistry, we all know the process is kind of chemistry. There's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and just a little bit different each time. So, yeah, I loved Man Ray. Man Ray was a huge influence for me as a photographer, sculptor, artist as well. He had a variation of facets and interests. And he kind of gave me the idea that I don't have to conform to one.
Put yourself in that box.
I could build, I could draw, I could paint. I could take pictures, you know. Why conform to one thing?
Exactly. And the one last thing I have to say about your art is I do see a lot of interpretation of nature. Like you said, this very, very much resembles a naturally formed spider web. And the larger piece with the iron grates kind of resembles like a honeycomb or a wasp nest or something, you know, and it's the rust itself is organic. It's natural oxidation, you know, and it's this natural organic feeling and quality that you bring to these inanimate, non-living materials, and it's fascinating, and I love your eye, dude. Just the way you see things. Thank you. I love it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that finding beauty within things that are, well, just easily passed up and a very, let's just say, throwaway culture. A very consumer-based reality we live in. I think that, you know, looking back upon what was once that isn't so, you know, luxurious to us now, these objects, I think we probably should be rethinking in an environmental way, because I hate to kick it, but, you know, that can is a problem. You know, we're surrounding, and that's, I think to a degree, I kind of took that wholesome idea of this is still beautiful, and how do we recycle it
and bring it back
bring it back, because that's really the next idea is like, okay, so you have this picture, you have this thing, you know, it's in a junkyard. How we could progress as a culture, and I think make less of this,
less waste, more
less
art.
waste, more art. I think that would be, you know, the perfect storm for what I'm up to. Is, you know, the concept of, you know, trying to make beauty out of what isn't beautiful. And how do we figure that out as a culture, a race? We're always going to be troubled with it.
Well, I really appreciate you coming and sharing your art and having this great conversation with me.
Thank you.
This has been another episode of ECTV's Roundtable Discussions. I'm your host, Travis Prince, and today my guest was Dino DeNaples. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.
Travis, thank you for having me.